physically, mentally challenging week for the Indy 500 winner, and I'm sure Taku's ready to get back behind the wheel of that car as we get going here for a pair of races in Detroit.
Schedule continues to be massaged with the Verizon IndyCar Series. Quite a departure here this weekend from what we have been used to on this doubleheader weekend in the past, tying in more with what we've seen throughout the course of this season in terms of practice and qualifying. More about that in just a moment, but first we want to welcome in Dave First, our colleague from the ABC affiliate in Indianapolis, Indiana, WRTV6. Dave is with us throughout most of this season. And, Dave, a nice mix of clouds and sunshine. We're off to a beautiful start weather-wise here at Belle Isle.
Yep, great to be back on the streets of Belle Isle. When we arrived this morning, nothing but sun. Now you look up, it's mostly cloudy with the sun peeking through some of the clouds as we begin this practice session this morning. Remember, it's a brief session. A lot of these practices are abbreviated this year in the 2017 Verizon IndyCar season schedule. But as for the conditions, nice, 63 degrees. Track temperatures way down as well, just 71 degrees. The humidity level at 56%. So it's a nice way to start the weekend, and most importantly, it's dry. Fingers crossed it's going to remain that way throughout the course of the weekend here, Mark.
Keep teams from setting and waiting on those 75-minute sessions that we used to have, shortened to 45 minutes here in 2017. Again, more about the schedule as this morning unfolds. Let's head back to pit road and welcome in Katie Hargan, who's with us this weekend from NBCSN and IndyCar. Katie, happy to have you with us here in Detroit.
Mark, it is so good to join the IndyCar radio crew here in Detroit. We talked about the hangover after the Indianapolis 500, but the guy that's not hungover, just a big smile on your face this week, Michael Andretti. How was it to win 2 in a row at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
Oh, it was amazing. It was just an amazing day last week. To be as competitive as we were with all our cars, and to win it with Takuma was just awesome. So proud of our whole team.
What is the grind of the week after the Indianapolis Motor Speedway?
It's really tough for the driver. I mean, they get here, they are like knackered after the full week because they really work them hard, which is really good to take advantage of the win. But for me, it was business as usual. Started working right away on Tuesday on this weekend and then in future.
Yeah, and now looking forward here to the Detroit Grand Prix, what's the team look like this week?
I think we should be okay. I mean, we'll find out here soon enough, but, I think our performance has been better than last year at most of the places, and actually Ryan ran really well here last year, so I could have won it with that. We didn't have a bad pit stop, so I think we have a good shot.
Has this kind of remotivated you guys after a really tough start to the 2017 season?
No, we're definitely motivated. I think the things that we were building off of this year was that we were more competitive. Okay, we haven't gotten the results, but at least we know that if things go right, we can win the races now. Where last year it was tough at a lot of places, so I think we've made huge improvements.
All right, thanks, Michael. Good luck this weekend.
Good stuff from Michael Andretti. And by the way, Nick, 5 Indy wins for Michael Andretti, tying him with Chip Ganassi and Lou Moore. And now Roger, the only one with more wins than those three guys. They're in a 3-way tie for second, and I know that he's frustrated at never having been to victory lane as a driver after coming so close repeatedly, but no question as an owner, he's pretty well got it figured out.
Racing gods have a weird way of rewarding a guy that, as you mentioned, came so darn close over the years and very could have easily put his face on the Borg Warner trophy multiple times. But, 5 Indy 500 wins now for Michael Andretti as an owner, 3 of the last 4. I mean, that organization really has the Speedway figured out. And there's no doubt, Mark, looking back at that race a week ago, they had the dominant package. Of course, Ryan Hunter-Reay that Michael alluded to, he's had some really tough breaks over the last couple years, honestly. Ryan Hunter-Reay's a guy that I think could have had about 4, 5, 6 more wins than he has. He loses an engine. Fernando Alonso had such a spectacular run, was up front. Alexander Rossi was competitive. And then even after all 3 of those guys had problems, 2 with engine issues and then Rossi with a bad pit stop, there was still an Andretti car to pick up the pace and win the race, Mark. It's a testament to how hard that organization has worked. And as Michael talked about, it's a very deserving win for that group. It's a tough week for the driver, jet setting all across the country. Tough week for the team as well, though, Mark, because you got to turn these cars over into road course setups or get those road course cars ready. And then ultimately with 2 races, there is no margin for error in terms of getting behind the 8 ball and tearing up race cars. So this is a stressful weekend for a lot of these teams, but there's no better way to head to Detroit, Mark, than after kissing the bricks and sipping the milk at Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't, not a guy up and down that paddock that wouldn't trade places with Takuma Sato in the last week for sure. Well, more on the schedule now. This session runs until 11:05 Eastern, and then we'll rejoin you at 3:30 Eastern this afternoon for another 45-minute practice session. And then, Nick Yeoman, after that, we qualify, race, and race. So it's a packed schedule for sure in terms of the opportunities to get time on the track. But I think for the teams, there's quite a few gaps. Now, mind you, plenty of track activity.
Yeah.
There's cars running all day in various classes. But this is a rather unique format in terms of it being a departure from what we have seen here at Detroit in years past.
Yeah, to qualify and race on both Saturdays and Sundays, qualifying for those individual events, that's a tough turnaround for a lot of these teams, and it's such a unique format, and it's one I think race fans have really grown to love. To have 2 races, double the points on the line this weekend is certainly can cause a big swing in the championship as, post 500 we start to take a look at that championship battle. But, lots of track activity, multiple sports car series here. Robbie Gordon Stadium trucks are back as well. So it is a great weekend of racing here at Belle Isle, Mark, as those joining us online on IndyCar's Facebook page, YouTube stream, Race Control, get to ride along with Marco Andretti as he makes his way around Belle Isle.
Interesting to note that in the past we had at least one session of the knockout qualifying format of the Firestone Fast 6. Not the case after the 2 practice sessions today, Nick. At 10:05 Eastern tomorrow, we will qualify for race number 1. 2 groups, and they get 12 minutes each. That's it. And then we'll get ready to go racing at around 3 o'clock Eastern Saturday. And then Sunday, 10:45, qualifying for race number 2. 2 groups, 12 minutes each. And then, again, we go racing later Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge for sure to have those cars ready for qualifying and then to go racing later in that day. It's, these setups, I think the setups don't vary too much. Ultimately, you're going to see a lot of guys go out on those alternate reds for that 12 minutes of qualifying that you get in those 2 groups. But it is a challenge. There's no doubt about that, Mark.
A couple of drivers of note added to the roster for this weekend, first and foremost. Good news for Graham Rahal and Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing that Oriol Servia is here and in a car this weekend. That's huge for Graham. As we mentioned in the month of May, he has consistently bemoaned the fact that he's a one-man band, if you will, and now he has a veteran to help him out. One of the most respected veterans of the paddock, in fact.
Yeah, that's Oriol Servia, who's going to pilot the 5th and 3rd bank Honda for Rahal Letterman Lanigan. So 2 cars for that organization this weekend. Both Rahal and Servia had good runs going at Indianapolis a week ago. Rahal was really starting to charge through the middle portions of that race, had a flat tire that kicked him deep into the field and just couldn't recover. He finished 12th. And then, of course, Oriol Servia got caught up in an accident. He was running in the top 5. And then, Mark, in that second Dale Coyne car, replacing the injured Sebastian Bourdais, Esteban Gutierrez from Monterrey, Mexico, made 59 Formula One starts for Sauber and Haas, 6 career championship points, also has 3 Formula E starts. And Katie Hargett, that's a very talented driver that Dale Coyne Racing is putting in behind the wheel of that number 18 machine.
He absolutely is, and I'm actually standing here with Dale Coyne. Dale, what stood out about Esteban and made you put him in the 18 this weekend?
We just looked at his resume. I mean, he won the GP3 championship, finished 3rd in GP2, which is highly competitive. It's hard to read a Formula One resume because the teams are so different. But he's a good friend of Adrian Fernandez, and we talked to Adrian about him, and his decision was pretty easy.
What is his mood like this weekend?
Well, this week he hasn't tested. He's never been in one of these cars, so he's getting his first laps right now. So this is just a learning weekend. I don't think until Road America, where we can actually do a test day and then show up, he'll be on his game. So
will he be in the 18 the rest of the season?
That's the plan, yep.
Now let's move on to Sebastian Bourdais. Have you talked to him? How's he feeling?
Yeah, he's feeling good. We talked to him about Esteban. He's very excited about having him in the car. So he's going to be on our debrief. We're going to call him up, and he'll be on our debrief after the session.
Good to hear. Sebastian is in good spirits. Mark?
Thanks, Katie. Good stuff. Interesting. It's that he'll be in the car for the rest of the year, which I think that's massive, Nick.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I think we were kind of concerned what was Dale going to do with that second car. Of course, they've had such a really good season. It's been up and down for sure. With wins to open the season at St. Petersburg with Sebastian Bourdais. Of course, Ed Jones, who we see right now in that Boy Scouts of America Honda. Such an impressive third-place run in the Indianapolis 500. But they've also had a lot of problems. They've blown some engines. They've torn up a lot of race cars. But to have a little continuity, to get Esteban Gutierrez up to speed here in Detroit, let him learn, and know that they're going to build around him for the rest of this season, Mark, I think that's really positive for that team. And ultimately, I think it's going to pay off for that organization.
Going to be interesting to see once the season gets closer to Sonoma. Sebastian Bourdais have been very vocal about his intent to be back for the season finale, and I know he expressed that almost from the time that he woke up after surgery. And I remember we talked to Dale Coyne at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He said, yeah, he told me that, and he said, yeah, maybe you could use those extra 4 months to go ahead and fully recuperate. So I'm sure that if he's healthy, he's cleared by the medical staff, it'll be decision-making time for Dale Coyne. And maybe if nothing else, they'll have a third car for the finale at Sonoma.
Well, that guy's Superman. I mean, Sebastian Bourdais, multiple fractures to his pelvis, a fractured hip. And, Mark, a few days after the surgery, he's on crutches, walking out of the hospital and heading to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So, and from what I've heard, I mean, the doctors were amazed at how quickly he's healing. So I wouldn't put it past him. That's an impressive healing that Sebastian Bourdais has shown already. And as Katie talked about, we've all been wishing Sebastian the best, and we do hope to see him back at the racetrack, and most importantly, back behind the wheel of a Verizon IndyCar machine very soon.
Well, Davey, Dave, first, we talked a little bit about the pressure on these teams. Let's not forget the good folks at Firestone, Dave. They, too, had to get ready for this weekend after a month in which they literally mounted and dismounted thousands of tires, and now they get to come up here and do it all over again in Detroit.
Yeah, how many times do we walk by Gasoline Alley in their garage back there and see those guys hard at work, changing out tires, putting on fresh sets of rubber for these teams. 33, of course. It was a long, long month, but a very successful one, because how many tire issues did we see during the month of May? How about zero? An amazing job the folks at Firestone have done. The story here this weekend, after, of course, just a couple of days after the Indianapolis 500, tire allotment in these practices is something to keep an eye on. Essentially, if you are 1 through 10 in points, you have one set of black tires, the primary blacks, to work with in this particular practice session. So if you're, I wouldn't expect to see a lot of guys that are in that bunch, the Paginos, Scott Dixons, Elio Castroneves, who finds himself atop the point standings right now. So while this practice session is pretty tight, they may not be out on the track as much as we usually see those guys. Now, if you're further back between 11 and on back, then you have two sets of primary blacks to work with in this practice session. So interesting tire allotment becoming a big story here in this practice session, although as brief as it is, Mark.
Spencer Piggott is P1 at this point. Second round 117.616. Hildebrand, Andretti, Daly, Hunter Ray, the top 5. Allotment, Munoz, Rahal, Kimball, and Chilton, the top 10. Jones and Gutierrez have been out. Oriol Servia has turned a couple of laps. So yet to see the full field. And, again, that's not a surprise. We see tire management at issue typically in that first session. It will be throughout the course of this day, as Dave first just described for you. This session will run until 11:05, by the way. Let's go back to pit road and Dave first.
An opportunity real quickly to catch up with Dario Franchitti, not only a three-time Indy 500 champion, but a champion here on the streets of Detroit. It wasn't that long ago, or was it, Dario?
I suppose that depends on what you're basing the time scale over. It was a few years ago now.
1999, exactly. So
1999. Yeah. It's
You're a young Dario Franchitti. What were you doing in 1999?
I was trying to beat Montoya to the championship and having a lot of fun off the track as well. Those were really fun times. They were good cars to race, and it was, Tony, Greg, myself, Max Pappas. We got in a lot of trouble, and it was, as I said, it was good fun.
Those were fun times. Of course, you're under contract with Chip Ganassi Racing, helping out these guys. How's Scott doing? Obviously, we saw that horrific accident at the Speedway. He's up, hobbling around, but obviously cleared to drive, and he's back in the number 9 machine.
Yeah, he seems fine. He seems absolutely fine. He was back in the gym, I think, as early as Tuesday. There's no stopping him. He just gets on with it. He said he feels good in the car. He went and did a fitting the other day. He's great pushing the pedals. So I don't expect any problem. I'm sure it'll be a little uncomfortable. But as I say, he doesn't really seem to notice pain. I definitely learned that competing with championships for the guy, so I think he'll be fine.
It is amazing the fitness level that these drivers, and you included when you were driving, where they are. I mean, you look at Sebastian Bourdais, doctors originally said he'd be in the hospital for 10 days, and look at it, he's out of the hospital in 4.
Yeah, Bourdais sent me a text the other day, said, "Hey, you coming to the gym in the morning, mate?" I said, "No, mate, I'm going to the pub tonight." But
for him,
yeah, absolutely. It's one thing having a fitness level, but I think the determination that all these drivers have too is really incredible. And you see that with Scott, you see that with Seb getting back on his feet and getting back to work. Especially when you're in the middle of a season, middle of a championship fight, if there's any way you can be in that car, you will be. And it is incredible to see. But when you're doing it, it feels normal. It feels part of your job.
Scott is a left foot breaker. How difficult is it braking here on the streets of Belle Isle?
I always right foot braked. Anytime I tried to left foot, I tended to cost Chip a lot of money by crashing cars. Again, it's bumpy. It's smoother than it has been in years past. I really don't see any problem for him.
Thanks for the chat. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Dave.
Dario Franchitti, of course, the 3-time Indy 500 champion, and won on the streets of Belle Isle, competing against the likes of Alex Zanardi and Elio, of course, back in the day, and Paul Tracy and Greg Moore. It was a fun time to watch these guys tool around this race course. But yeah, Scott Dixon, sore, extremely sore. I think I would properly explain it as a sore left foot, but getting around okay, walking on it. He's definitely got a limp as he tries to get around, but he's going to give it a go this weekend. All the more difficult, Mark James, you consider they've got not one race but 2 this weekend.
About Dario Franchitti, Nick, our worst fears were realized after that horrific crash at Houston. We thought that might be his final race, and it ended up being just that. The fear was that he would leave the sport, go off into retirement, which he could have very easily done. But I think a true sportsman, a class act, and a top-notch ambassador for open-wheel racing. And we're fortunate that we have Dario Franchitti at the track on a regular basis and being such high profile.
Yeah, I mean, that accident in Houston was just so horrific that, of course, there were some fears that because of the brain trauma, Mark, that there may be some long-lasting impacts. And Dario admitted, the months after that accident that things were very, very, foggy and hazy and had a hard time, dealing with the short-term and long-term memory loss. But, boy, he seemingly has bounced back quite a bit. And you're right, it's great to have him at the racetrack. I know Max Chilton really appreciates it because Dario's usually on that radio coaching Max on these race weekends, and we've seen some improvement from him in year 2 with the Verizon IndyCar Series. But you're not going to find a classier champion than Dario Franchitti, who loves this sport, loves the history of racing, and boy, he is just a great guy to talk to. And that was great stuff with Dave First there on pit lane.
About Scott Dixon, you do this long enough, you hope to have a quote-unquote signature moment. You've had a couple recently. Of course, your call to the finish of last year's Freedom 100, but we were talking about before we went on that we have a dual system, an intercom system that allows us to communicate off air. You had witnessed something earlier on the track, and we were in another direction on another subject at that point. You said, "Hey, get it to me when you get a chance," and we threw it out there, never anticipating that a call like that would unfold before your very eyes. But I've asked, a lot of people have asked me in post-race, post-Indy 500 interviews, how do you not get caught up in the moment. And I don't have a stamp pat answer for him. You're just doing what you do. That's all.
Yeah, and I got a lot of compliments about that call, and while I'm very appreciative, I've been quick to tell people I'd prefer I never call a car flying through the air like that ever again, because it was scary. And here's the thing, Mark. I mean, you have to take the emotion out of it, but at the same time, it's hard to watch something like that happening, whether you're, in the stands, watching it on television, or calling the race in turn 2 or wherever you're at, and see something like that and not have your jaw hit the floor. It was, as we talked about, dumb luck that I happened to be talking at the time, to look to my left and to see that accident as Jay Howard hit the wall and shot back across the racetrack. And it was quite a spectacle to see Scott Dixon fly through the air. Just so happy he's okay, Mark, because that was a scary, scary accident. That car was just destroyed. I mean, the front wing was gone, the entire rear suspension, the engine, the side pods. I mean, nothing except the tub that kept Scott Dixon safe, as Dave first talked about, nursing a very, very sore foot this weekend, which is going to be a tough challenge. But, man, that was quite a moment. Left a lot of people speechless after that accident, but most importantly, the fact that Scott Dixon is in that Camping World Honda racing this weekend is it's a miracle, and it's a testament to what the Lara and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and everybody, all the IndyCar series, all the safety features in these race cars. We got very, very lucky. Dodged a bullet for sure.
This raceway at Belle Isle, 2.35 in length in terms of miles, a 14-turn temporary street course, 70 laps this weekend, 164.5 miles. And last year, Ryan Hunter-Reay used phrases like swatting flies in the cockpit and feeling as though your hair is on fire. It's plenty bumpy as well, and going to be interesting to watch this weekend unfold and see if maybe weather has an impact in either qualifying or on race day. For now, Elio Castro-Neves is P1. He's had some success here. Happens to be your points leader, by the way. Kimball, Sato, Hunter-Reay, and Rahal. Lotion, Andretti, Piggott, Hildebrand, and Power the top 10. Then Daly and Hinch, Newgarden, Rossi, Pagano, Kanan, Munoz, Servia, Gutierrez, Chilton, Dixon, and Jones. All 22 cars have turned laps here on Belle Isle.
During the 1969 Indy 500, Mario Andretti's crew couldn't get his tire to come off, so he had no choice but to keep driving on it. That tire held up the whole race and took Mario to the winner's circle. Right, Mario?
That's right. If it wasn't for the dependability of Firestone tires, I wouldn't be an Indy 500 champion.
Here's to making more champions with the official tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Back when I knew it all.
Montgomery Gentry, the rejoin, and they will be here in concert this weekend, and it's become quite a party atmosphere here on Belle Isle. Nick Yeoman and Bud Dinker, Roger Penske. I follow the Detroit Grand Prix on Twitter at Detroit GP, and they are as active in January as they are in April and May.
Yeah, on multiple fronts. First being, it's not easy to put these street course events together and to construct this racetrack, and the effort that all the folks on site do is always impressive. But you're right, in terms of promoting this event, they got drivers coming up throughout 12 months a year, 365 days in a year. They've got drivers coming up here, going to basketball games, visiting the local TV stations to promote this event. And I think, Mark, it's why you've seen a lot of race fans flock to Belle Isle on this race weekend after the Indy 500 to see those same stars and cars compete in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Well, Nick, let's take a look at the points championship, and Elio Castro-Neves finds himself in front by 11 points. A pretty good battle for second. Defending series champion Simon Pagano, Takuma Sato vaulted into that three-way tie for second, along with Scott Dixon. Rossi, Kanan, Will Power, 55, 57, 59. Newgarden, 59. Jones, 60. James Hinchcliffe, Max Chilton. That's the top 11 separated by 75 points. coming into a double points weekend.
Yeah, that bodes pretty well, I think, for the competitiveness of this championship moving forward. Mark, 6 races, and we've had 6 different winners as well, which is,
awesome.
is a pretty cool highlight. Well, but you mentioned those front 4 all within 11 points. Simon Pagenaud was the points leader heading into Indianapolis. Scott Dixon, with his pole run, scored a lot of points and took over the points championship. And then Helio Castroneves and Takuma Sato, by finishing 1-2 in the Indianapolis 500, have vaulted their way right into the championship hunt. You mentioned Helio, though. Been a very, very consistent season for the Brazilian. Has not finished in 6 races, Mark, worse than 9th. So for Helio, yeah, he was really disappointed. You could hear it in his voice when he talked to Dave First after the 500. He was emotional about coming up short once again to win this 4th Indianapolis 500. Once you put that behind you, though, Mark, there is one big box that Helio would love to check, and that's, of course, a championship in the Verizon IndyCar Series. And so far through 6 races, he's sitting pretty at the top of the championship.
Well, after running in the Indianapolis 500, he's back to the owner's box now, talking about Ed Carpenter. Dave First has caught up with him.
Yeah, it's funny. We make it past the Indy 500, you blink, and everything's back to normal. Do you call this normal, being an owner, not a driver?
More what the routine is for the year. On one hand, Indy's normal, because we're there for a while. But yeah, I'd say back to reality.
Back to that other job now.
Yeah, but it's good. It's always hard to move on from the month of May, especially for 32 of us that are unhappy. So it's good to get back to the racetrack and get focused on the rest of the season and supporting the guys here in Detroit.
How would you describe your month of May as a driver?
It was good. I thought we performed well. I thought the team did a good job. Just didn't get the result we wanted in the race, but as far as how the team performed, how the car was, I was pretty happy with it. We just didn't quite execute well enough to get the result we wanted on race day.
Spencer Pigot back in the 20 as well. You didn't mind him going to another team for Juncos Racing at all?
No, I was happy that he was a part of the race. We had tried to put something together, but just couldn't get the right situation in place early enough, and certainly didn't want to prevent him from having an opportunity to develop and get more experience. So I was happy that he was part of it.
They just fired up the number 20 once again, so we'll see Spencer Pigot back out on the race course. There he is taking off next to us now. There's really 2 seasons, are there not? You've got the Indy 500. Once you're past that, now you concentrate on the championship all told. What is the plan for you guys now the rest of the way?
Yeah, obviously the Indy 500 is a huge goal, and, you can't, when you don't achieve that, you can't let it define your year. So we're trying to put both cars as high as we can in the championship. Entrant points for the 20 and driver championship too for the 21. But between that and just trying to get as many wins as we can.
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Owner Ed Carpenter. By the way, of course, you started in the front row for the Indy 500, came home 11th. You can tell any other driver that might be a pretty nice month of May, but not for Ed Carpenter. He was hoping to get that elusive win at the Yard of Bricks.
The proverbial shockwave sent through the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when his time and speed was first announced on his qualifying run in that Chevrolet.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, Scott Dixon decided he was going to throw down an even bigger one at 232 miles an hour, but it is fun. I love that Fast 9 shootout format, Mark, because that day, that Armed Forces Pole Sunday, it just kind of builds and builds as we fill the field from 33 up to 10, and then once the fans are packed in there, we start to see the big speeds, and it doesn't matter if it's the Butler Bulldog Ed Carpenter or Scott Dixon or a rookie. They start throwing down some big laps, that place explodes. So it is going to be interesting, though, for that Ed Carpenter Racing team moving forward now that we get past the Indianapolis 500 because, as you mentioned, Ed and Spencer Pigot splitting rides for the 20 car. They've got to focus on the team entrant points. And then for J.R. Hildebrand, while he'd love to get in the championship hunt, missing that race at Barber Motorsports Park hurt them. So for that organization, Mark, I think they're definitely focusing on seeing how many wins they can rack up, and the points will take care of themselves. But certainly it was good to see Ed and J.R. show some speed in qualifying. I know they would have liked to see a little bit better results in the 500 itself, but that is a popular group all season long.
Back to Helio, we were talking about the where he stands in the battle for the points championship, and I guess if you're looking to continue your momentum and get it going in the right direction for Helio Castroneves. There might be no place you'd rather be at this point. This, after all, where Spider-Man was born way back in 2000, some 28 wins ago, 29 for his career. He has a total of 3 here. It usually starts pretty well, 10 top 5 starts to go along with those 3 wins. He's been in the top 5 7 times and 10 top 10 finishes in 15 starts. And so this is a place that seems to suit his driving style. I think the key to him, as you mentioned, and we see it over the course of the season, no question last year, Simon Pagenaud's championship, some of the struggles he had mid-season, that was a wash because of 3 consecutive wins that he ran off. I'm not saying that can't happen again with a Will Power or a Simon Pagenaud, but as we've seen through the first 6 races, the odds of that this year aren't good. So if you can have all top 5 or top 10 finishes, grab yourself a couple of podiums, pick up a point here and there as Helio has done with qualifying, that may make the difference once you get to Sonoma.
Yeah, this championship battle is so tight, and I think a lot of that, Mark, is the fact that, boy, Honda has upped their game so much coming into this season, as one of them just went P1 as Graham Rahal just turned the fastest lap of the session at a minute 12 a minute 15.333. But yeah, I think consistency is going to play a major role in this championship. And then you mentioned if Helio Castroneves is going to get off of that string of just finishing inside the top 10 and find his way to victory lane, this is a good place to do it. You mentioned all the wins, and Mark, this is the site of his last win as well, all the way back in 2014. So it is time for Helio Castroneves to win a race. Brings a lot of momentum here to Detroit after that runner-up finish, and as you mentioned, being the championship leader, he can now refocus on what he wants to do and win a championship.
He started 16th at St. Petersburg, finished 6th. He started 19th for the Indianapolis 500, finished 2nd. Starting positions, how much easier does this make your day? First at Long Beach, he was pole sitter. Outside of the front row at Barber, pole sitter at Phoenix, outside the front row of the Indianapolis Grand Prix. All of those resulted in top 10 finishes. His worst finish, Long Beach, 9th.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to jinx him because we have seen things come unraveled for guys in a hurry mid-season for sure. But at least through the first 6 races of the season, he appears to have that jaw squarely locked in terms of winning that much elusive championship.
There's a good shot of Mikhail Aloshin in that Lucas Oil Honda for Schmidt-Peterson. He's going to bring that car back to pit lane as he had a slight moment out there sliding that car around this racetrack. Mark, this is an unforgiving circuit. I mean, there are not a lot of places where if that car, kicks out and you've got to crank the steering wheel in an opposite lock and try to catch it, a lot of times it's going to bite you because there are some hard concrete walls waiting around every corner here at Belle Isle.
And that guy's not going to get cheated either here, Mikhail Aloshin, for darn sure. I mean, he's all over it. Finished 13th in the Indianapolis 500. That was, unfortunately for him, an unlucky number. That's where he qualified, where he started, and oddly enough, where he finished. So it was. I think he would classify that as somewhat of an average day for sure. A good run all in all for Marco Andretti. I just had a feeling Marco was going to, at the very least, end up on the podium. But again, much like Aloshin, he qualified 8th, started 8th, and finished 8th, and just couldn't seem to find a race car to get him up with that lead pack, but he hung around in contention most of the day, for sure.
Yeah, Michael Andretti admitted in that banquet speech earlier this week on Monday that he just, they thought they missed it a little bit on Marco's car. As good as Hunter Ray was, as Alonso was, as Rossi and Sato were, Jack Harvey obviously had a tough month, that 6 car, with a lot of struggles. They just felt like they missed it a little bit with Marco Andretti. He lost a winglet mid-race, which caused a problem as well. And as you mentioned, could never really get himself into the top 5 in position to make some passes and get his way to victory lane, which he wants to so badly. But all in all, an 8th place finish for a driver that's had a really rough season, Mark. A lot of finishes outside of the top 15. That was a positive for Marco.
Much was made of the drive by Ed Jones. Much was made of the drive by Max Chilton, James Davison, until he got caught up in an incident. But almost the definition of under the radar. you looked up at the timing and scoring, and I know he's not here this weekend, but how about the ride that Gabby Chavez gave the car for Harding Racing? He finished 9th in the Indianapolis 500, and while we won't see them this weekend, we are going to see them a couple of more times this season, which is good news.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Gabby Chavez gave that Harding Racing Chevrolet a fantastic run, finishing in the top 10. We're going to see him at Texas and Pocono, so that's pretty cool. How about Ziggy Harkis, though, Katie Hargett? He got to sip the milk, kiss the bricks 1 week ago at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's, of course, on the pit box for our winner, Takuma Sato.
Like you said, Nick, Ziggy calls the shots for Takuma. Ziggy, walk me through those last few laps with Takuma. How did you keep him calm, switching the lead with Helio Castroneves? Oh.
Yeah, we actually had our spotter, Roger Yasukawa, was doing a great job all through the race of just keeping him calm, making him focus on what the end result would needed to be, and he just hung in there and did what we asked for. So, yeah, fantastic job by both Taku and Roger, and worked out.
And you heard Ziggy kind of take a breath there. That's because Takuma Sato just headed back out on track. We'll let him pay attention to the Indy 500 champ.
Our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton, is here this weekend, and Davey, kind enough to be doing his job even when he's not in the booth. Nick, we talked a little bit about how bumpy this surface was. Davey, of course, runs the two-seater, and he said the back straight, by the way, has been ground. He said it's really nice, but it's very bumpy here from the fountain to the final turn. And we remember last year the drivers consistently saying, this is as physically demanding of a place. Some of them even went so far as to say they had headaches after they were done running lap after lap after lap.
That's great feedback, though, from Davey, and I like to hear that backstretch is smooth, Mark, because that's one of the best passing points from turn 6 all the way down, leading to where I'm going to be actually in turn number 7. So to know that area is a little bit smoother and these guys may be able to get runs and be able to focus in on what they're doing while those helmets and hands are rattling on the steering wheel, that's positive. That part of the racetrack where he said it is bumpy around the fountain and the back half of the course, Mark, that's a tough place to pass anyway. So that I'm not too concerned about. So that's good feedback from Davey Hamilton, and I think that's positive for this weekend.
Just about 6 minutes remaining in this session, Graham. Rahal goes to P1, Newgarden, Castro Neves, Rossi, and Power, your top 5 here as preparations continue for the doubleheader weekend, the Detroit Grand Prix.
Hi, I'm Mario Andretti. To promote the Firehawk Indy 500 tire, Firestone asked me to describe what it feels like to win the world's biggest race on Firestone tires. I would say it feels like vroom, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 boom, boom, bum, bum. And that's pretty much it.
Whatever you drive a Firestone.
Graham Rahal continues to show the fast way around. 1:15.333. We're watching the 98 machine of Alexander Rossi, and very seldom when they come off of the turn do we see a lot of stability in the rear of that race car, talking about that bumpiness. You ever find yourself getting distracted when you're out there calling that complex from 7 through 11 because you're right there on the river? And especially if it's a nice day, I mean, the watercraft, it makes for a spectacular view for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. From where I'm at, to my right is, of course, Windsor, Ontario, across the river, and then obviously the spectacular side of that portion of the racetrack. It's a very technical part of the racetrack, and that lead down to turn number 7, as we talked about before the break, it's one of the best passing places on this racetrack, as well as getting down into turn 3 as well. But it is fun to watch the rear suspensions on these cars, the driver's hands, moving back and forth. You want these cars as planted to the racetrack as possible, but on these street circuits, you just don't have that luxury very often. And it is fun to see these the technical aspects, Mark, of these race cars as they bounce around Belle Isle.
And we have said it before. We'll say it again. I think this is a prime example. You stop and think about the skill set that it takes to master the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in that 2.5-mile oval. And then all of a sudden you have to hit the reset button and rely on a totally different skill set, not one but 2 times. throughout the course of this weekend. I don't know in motorsports that there is a truer champion than the champion of the Verizon IndyCar Series.
There's a look at our fastest driver so far, Graham Rahal, making his way around Belle Isle. A different look. Of course, Steak and Shake was the primary sponsorship for that car for the Indianapolis 500. Turn for Troops, a great initiative as Graham Rahal and Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and United Rentals are raising some money for these full-body, mechanical suits to help our veterans get back on their feet. So good to see that paint scheme this weekend. Let's check in, though, on pit lane with Dave first.
Yeah, here with Kyle Moyer, of course, helps call the shots for the reigning Verizon IndyCar Series champion, Simon Pagenaud, currently 11th in this practice session right now. Scott Dixon has spun out on the race course, but he looks like, take a look. Yep, there's Dixon. Red flag, is that right, boys? Red flag conditions here at the as practice rolls on. A quick conversation with Kyle Moyer, who again calls the shots for Simon Pagenaud. You guys had a very interesting Indy 500, didn't you?
You can call it interesting. I call it a bummer. It just wasn't our day all day long. We fought to get up front, and we got hit in the back, and that caused a drag, so we sort of fell to the back.
If they're going to bring Simon Pagenaud back here on pit road, how quickly, Kyle, can you switch now from Indy 500 mode to, hey, let's go after another championship?
Well, winning the championship's our number one priority now. Has been for a while. I mean, Indy's its own, now that's over with. So, yeah, we're back concentrating on the championship. So we switched gears back to where we were, try to get points as best we can, get back into this top five that we had going, and I think if we can finish in the top five the rest of the season and a couple more wins, we'll probably be able to handle it.
For Simon, how comfortable is he now back on these roads and streets, and this is his forte, obviously?
Yeah, you say it's his forte, but I'll remind you we did win Phoenix, so. Yeah, so, we're getting the ovals figured out. And, to win a championship in IndyCars, you got to be good on everything, super speedways, ovals, short ovals, street courses, road courses. And, he's there now. He got there like last year for sure, if not the year before. You got Helio teaching him. You got, Rick Mears helping out, so you got everybody helping him get better, and now he's there.
Not to take anything away from Phoenix, but he is you look at his development over the last couple of years, he is a much more well-rounded driver nowadays.
Yeah, I think we could probably maybe challenge for the win at Texas. I think he pulled a good move there last year to go for a championship instead of the win at Texas. But at the same time, he's good enough to win there. He's good enough to win Indy. Anywhere we go now, we're good enough to win.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Thanks a lot.
Kyle Moyer again. As Simon Pagenaud runs 11th as practice is still red here, so that might be the end of practice here, Mark James.
Yeah, he was flinging that thing around the racetrack for sure, and Nick came off the turn at full saw. A couple of the drivers in front of him around that turn 13 area made it plenty wide for sure, and Scott came off of that corner, and the rear end of the car just stepped away from him.
Can you call that a veteran spin? Because I was actually impressed. Sure, the car stepped out from Scott Dixon, but he locked it down to keep it from hitting either one of the walls, and then once he had it 180 degrees turn mark, he let off the brake and let that car roll out of the racing groove just in case there was someone behind him, so he wouldn't have sent drivers going left or right to try to avoid him. But, boy, that was good to see Scott Dixon keep that car off the wall. Good to see Camping World on the sponsorship on that car, Mark, decide that they didn't want to just be a part of the Indianapolis 500. They want to be on that car long-term for quite a few races here for the rest of the season. That's pretty cool. Scott Dixon was refired and made his way back to pit lane. And, Mark, we've got 1 minute left for these teams to probably go out and turn one more lap before practice ends.
Yeah, a little bit of a break for us, you might say. We'll practice again at 3:30 Eastern this afternoon. That's a 45-minute session. Here is the schedule, by the way, for Saturday. Qualifying for race number 1 from 10 to 10:35 Eastern. So join us for that. We'll have the whole crew up for that. I'll be joined to the booth by our driver analyst, Davey Hamilton, Jake Query, Nick Yeoman, be out on the course, Katie, Michael Young, Dave First, all on pit road. And then race number 1 at 3 p.m. Eastern. The whole cast and crew that we just mentioned. Then on Sunday, we'll go qualifying for race number 2 at 10:40 Eastern. And then join you again at 3 p.m. Eastern for race number 2. If you hear, like the late, great Ernie Banks used to say, Cub fans, let's play 2.
Yeah, it's a cool weekend for sure for race fans that come out to Detroit to get to see a pair of races. And again, Mark, we talked about it. This is a race weekend that can really shape this championship hunt because so often we've seen drivers who have bad Saturdays, tear up race cars, put their teams behind the 8 ball, that have to scramble to put a car back together. They're oftentimes not very competitive on Sunday, and you could take a big hit in the championship battle if that's your storyline leaving Detroit.
Right now we see a little balance at the top, Nick. I can't really say one manufacturer is more dominant than the other, while Rahal is P1. A couple of bow ties are next as the checkers flies. Castro Neves and Newgarden are second and third, respectively. Then Rossi, then Will Power, your top 5. So parity among the top 5 after this first practice session.
Yeah, you got 3 Penske drivers in the top 5. That we're not surprised by, but I'm impressed by Graham Rahal, who's going to end this session with the fastest lap of the practice session. Alexander Rossi showing some speed. The Andretti cars look pretty impressive as well. Alex Rossi was 4th. Marco Andretti with a good session as he's 6th fastest. Ryan Hunter-Reay was 9th, and then our Indy 500 champion Takuma Sato appears that Mark, he's going to end the practice session 12th quick.
Yeah, Graham Rahal, he has had his share of woes throughout the course of this season, Nick, and this is a guy who's looking for Lady Luck to smile upon him a little bit. Have not really been that strong in qualifying. Is not oftentimes made it out of the first round. He finished 6th at the Indianapolis Grand Prix, 12th at the Indy 500. His best finish prior to that was a 10th place finish at Long Beach, and this is a guy who just 2 years ago was very much in a battle for a championship, had some rotten luck down the stretch in a year in which he could have won it.
Yeah, really found his stride with his father's team a couple years ago, scoring some wins in Mid-Ohio, an absolute thriller in Fontana. Of course, went to victory lane by a handful of inches at Texas Motor Speedway a year ago, and then, as you mentioned, has started 2017 and just not been able to hit that stride and match those performances. Felt really good about how he ran at Indianapolis despite the result not there in the flat tire. But this will be a big boost, Mark, I think, for that entire Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan organization. With 2 cars this weekend, as we talked about. Rahal was fastest. Oriol Servia making his 2nd and 3rd start of the season. He was struggling a bit in that practice session. Only ended up 20th quick. But for Graham to be P1 after practice 1, I think that's going to bode well for the American driver.
Again, Rahal, Castro Neves, Newgarden, Rossi, and Power the top 5. Then Andretti, Dixon, Kanaan, Hunter-Reay, and Hinch the top 10. Pagenaud 11th quick. The Indy 500 winner, Takuma Sato, 12th quick. 13th, Allotment. 14th, Hildebrand. 15th, Kimball. 16th, Munoz. 17th, Chilton. 18th, Daly. 19th, Spencer Pigot. 20th, Oriol Servia. Gutierrez in the 18 machine this weekend, 21st. Ed Jones is 22nd. Alexander Rossi, 4th quick, Nick. A front row starter at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, led 23 laps of the 500 in contention all day, ended up finishing 7th. We see Alexander Rossi slowly but surely getting more and more comfortable, more and more familiar. A guy who's ready to contend for race wins and podiums week in and week out.
And I think you're going to see now in year 2 for Alexander Rossi, after he goes to a lot of these racetracks for a second time, it's going to really pay off. Alexander Rossi, of course, a 2016 Indy 500 champion. Let's hear from the man that won it 1 week ago. Takuma Sato standing by with Katie Hargett.
And, Nick, every time I see pictures of Takuma Sato on social media, I don't think you've been able to wipe the smile off your face all week, including right now. What has the grind of the media tour been like for you?
It's just happy, you know. I mean, it was obviously exhausting, tiring, you know, after only 3.5 hours of sleep in the last 72 hours or whatever. But it was great, you know. I think Brittany and, the Susan from IndyCar PL did a fantastic job getting things together. We had 11 hours made it to almost every day, so it was a great reaction, and it was a fantastic tour.
Let's look forward to the Detroit GP now this weekend. How was your car in practice this morning?
Car felt pretty good, straight out of the box, and we were cracking a quite competitive time, and in the end, we were trying the different things, and so I'm confident, and at least I'm comfortable, and it looks like I'm awake, so it's good.
All right, it's good to see Takuma Sato almost bouncing throughout the paddock this weekend, Mark.
Let's check in with Dave first, get an update after this session, how Scott Dixon is feeling, Dave.
Yeah, let's see how Scott Dixon's feeling. How's the left foot?
Sore, but it's kind of what you would figure. But it's good to be back on track, and Camping World car seems really fast. We had a good lap there before I spun. I think would have put us second or third, but all things considering, brand new car. A lot of credit goes to the team. Everybody on the 9-car crew and everybody at Chip Ganassi for pitching in and having to build a new car and get here, and obviously going straight from Indianapolis and to a doubleheader is never easy. But it's good to see Camping World back with us, and excited for the rest of the weekend.
Crazy last couple of weeks for you, obviously. You're a left foot breaker. How does that affect the soreness of the left foot?
It's just hard to, modulate and feel as much as normal. I feel like the braking and these things is kind of, a lot of the performance. So just the first session there, trying to get my head wrapped around what I need to do and how I can maybe favor it a little bit or whatever I need. But, all in all, it seems not too bad. It's just a little achy, but once you're out on track, you're not really thinking about it too much.
Tell you what, kudos to the crew. As you mentioned, putting a car back together to get it ready for a doubleheader, and Camping World's back on board as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. Big thanks to Camping World, and it's going to be good to have them for the rest of the season, and hopefully we can get a couple of wins here soon.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.
Yep, Scott Dixon.
Good stuff, Katie Hargett. Dave first. Heard from a lot of folks on pit road. Michael Andretti. Heard from Dale Coyne. We heard from Dario Franchitti, Takuma Sato, Scott Dixon, and others. We'll do it all again for you at 3:30 Eastern this afternoon. The director of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network and IndyCar Radio is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. For Katie, Dave, and Nick Yeoman, I'm Mark Jane. So long for now from Belle Isle.